Hey guys, welcome to the video number 273. My name is Ajay and I'm going to talk about today how to create the pivot in the Excel, and this is going to be a video where we actually will start from the very beginning level, right? I hope all of you are doing extremely well, and since this is the video number 273, so for those who are watching the channel for the first time, I just want to request you that if you are looking for the Excel videos, Excel VBA videos, Access videos, or maybe Access VBA, if you want to learn it, then please go ahead on the website, on the channel, I beg your pardon, and on the channel, YouTube channel, just click on the playlist and you would see here different playlists which I have created for you, and based on the subject line, you will understand that what exactly this playlist is, the videos it actually has. So what you need to do is you just need to scroll it down. As you can see here, we have Access videos, we have Excel videos, Excel VBA videos. The videos which starts with the Excel VBA, that means we have talked about the Excel VBA. The video which only starts with the Excel word, there is no VBA word, that means it's an Excel video. And similarly for the Access, if it says Access VBA, that means we actually have made the code over there. And if the video is only talks about, let's say, Access forms, let's say this one where we have not used any VBA word, then that means it's actually front-end Access and there's no VBA, right? So I have got almost all the topics covered for you, and the topics which are not yet covered I'm covering, but 90% of the topics are almost covered in this channel. So go ahead and watch all those amazing videos and be a part of this channel. All right, so in this video we are going to learn one of the greatest analytical tool which we have, which we have in the Excel, and that is called the pivot, right? Some people also call it pivots. That's fine, right? It's just that it's just kind of different people, they have the different way of pronouncing it. But pivot, whatever, I will call it as pivot because I actually call it as pivot. So and this now I have prepared a dummy dashboard, dummy data actually, where you can see we have the manager name, associate names who are aligned, under these managers, different managers we have, and we have a call answered and the abandoned. So this is a kind of a call center data, or maybe any data, let's say banking data, customer care data basically, right? And in the customer care, what happens, we have the date on date record, and on the date on date record we are able to see that how many calls this associate has answered, how many calls we have got abandoned in the IVR, when actually it was coming, and the team leader names is also there, right? So now guys, why do we use the pivot? That's the first thing. Now you use the pivot because you want to summarize everything, right? You use the pivot so that the person who actually you're gonna send the file, where you have the pivot, they can actually quickly change the filters, they can change the pattern also of the report, and they really don't have to use any formulas for that. So it's a very easy way, and at the same time it's very dynamic, it's very flexible, very easy to make. And what it does, it summarizes the report so that you can do the good analysis, right? And from the pivot you can also make the charts, awesome charts, trust me on that, and many people use those in the dashboard, right? Maybe I will be covering that piece in the next video, but in this video we are going to learn how to start with the pivots, right? Okay, now guys, before I start, I just want to tell you, if I write here a question, let's say the question is that what I want to do is I want to say that associate name, let's say Suman, how many calls are answered, how many calls she has answered. Okay, let's say this is the topic, this is the question. Now tell me one thing, if you do not know pivot, what would be the possibly the possible thing you would do? Well, I can think of the filter, putting the filter. So I just go quickly here, I use the filter Alt DFF. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna simply go here in the data and the filter, or Alt DFF. You just click on that, and then I will click on the Suman, and I uncheck everything, and I would find that where is that name coming. So I keep a check mark on that, and when I have the check mark, then I can actually select these, and I can see that they are 120. So that's the one of the way. Let me remove the filter. Now what is the another way of doing it? Well, another way of doing it is called the SUMIF function. I can use the SUMIF function as well. If you don't have any idea about the SUMIF function, please go ahead and watch the playlist Excel Count and Sum Family. I have talked about these functions from the very basic level, and we have the mixture of, you know, advanced, intermediate and the basic level videos. So you will really love that series. There are, I think, more than 5-6 videos on the sum and the count family. Now SUMIF, you select the range. So the range which you want to actually select is going to be this range. I select this B to B, and then in this range what is going to be the criteria? Summon, because we want to filter the records for the summon, and what you want to sum, obviously the call answered. So when you press enter, you get to see 120, right? But let's say immediately your requirement is changed. Now you don't need the associated in summon, you need it for the Susie, right? Then what would you do? Again, you would come back and you would like to change the formula here, right? You would write here then Susie, and the answer would change accordingly, right? Now let's say at the same time you also want, you know, that the summary for all the associates. How many calls answered? So let's say I'm going to write here calls answered for every associate. Then what will you do? Then it is going to be a little lengthy, you know, in case if you're talking about the SUMIF function, because then you will have to write here all the names. Like for example, you're going to write Suman, you're going to write Kia, you're going to write Jackie, you're going to write Ritika. So first of all, you will find all the names which are coming in your database, and then perhaps, you know, you can go here and you can use the SUMIF function, right? You use the SUMIF, you give the range, and in the range the criteria would be this, because when I will drag it, it will change to Kia, Cheki and Ritika, and the sum range would remain as it is. So now this is actually kind of a work you can do. There is no problem in that, right? But pivots are something else. Pivots are really pretty awesome. They are very easy to use. You don't really have to work on the formulas. They can be worked without formulas, right? Because, you know, I can ask a number of things in one single pivot. I can ask that, all right, so who is the manager, you know, whose team has performed the best in terms of answering the maximum call answered, or who is the worst, you know, the manager name, you know, who is the worst in terms of giving the performance, so we can calculate the maximum number of amendments, you know. Or maybe I would say that, all right, give me the quarter wise performance based on these dates. How many calls we have answered in quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, how many calls we have got amended quarter wise, year wise, month wise, or between some two specific dates, between two specific months. There are a lot of things. You can make the formulas, but not exactly it is, you know, they work the way the pivot works. So that's why, guys, you need the pivot, right? It's very easy. It can summarize all the things. So whatever things I have written here, that is going to be answered in the pivots very quickly. So let's go ahead and let me first go ahead and simply, you know, create the pivot. So how are you going to create the pivot? Now look at this. The first thing which you would do is you go to the insert. I'm using Excel 2016, and I believe I have worked in 2007, I have worked in 2010, and it, you know, works the same way. I'm not sure about the 2013, but I guess if 2010 is same, and if you have 2016, you know, it works the same way, then obviously there will be no problem if you are using the Excel 2013. So what do you need to do? You need to click on the pivot table, insert and pivot table. I click on the pivot table. Once you click on the pivot table, this is what exactly you see, create pivot table. Now you have a different options here. Choose the data that you want to analyze, select table or range. So here you would like to give the data. Now as you can see, by default IntelliSense is so strong that it actually has highlighted this entire table, right? If I scroll it down, you see that that's the row number 28, which is it is highlighting, right? Now let's say you don't want to select this. Maybe you want to select any other table, so no problem, just, you know, remove this, and you can go ahead and you can select the any other table. For example, if I have some data here, I can select that. That's perfectly fine, right? So anyways, I'm going to select the table again. So this is my table, as you can see, and I'm going to select this entire table. Now that's the first thing, right? Now what is the another thing? Now you have another option, use an external data source. Now guys, this is required when you actually want to connect it with the external applications. In this, we are not connecting any other external application, right? We are just only using the Excel, right? And which is of course the part of this workbook. Within this workbook we have this data. Now what is the next thing? Use where you want the pivot table to be placed. So where do you want? Do you want in the new worksheet? Do you want in the existing worksheet? If you want in the existing worksheet, the moment you click on that, it says the location option and you can select the cell. So the pivot will come here. Okay, the pivot is going to be formed here. So that's all up to you, right? Generally people like to create it in the new worksheet so that the data, it should not mix up with the pivot, right? But because we are just going to learn it, so I can make the pivot right over here as well. That's perfectly fine. Okay, now what is the next thing? When you selected the H8, just click on the OK. I click on the OK, and guys, this is what exactly you would see. Pivot table fields, which you can drag it here and there, you can move it. This is a very important window. Now in this window you see that we have basically 4 segments. The pivot categories, the pivot is divided into 4 categories. One is called the filter, the second is column, the another is row, and the value. And then on the top side here you will have all the headers, manager name, associate name, whatever the headers you have. If you don't see this pivot table field, let's say if you just close it, now this is gone, right? So what is the way to get it back? It's very simple, guys. What you can do is right click and say that show field list. It will be back, right? One more thing which you can see, that when I select this pivot, this gets on pivot table tools, and it is exactly the same way when you work on the charts, right? I have uploaded the videos on the charts as well. We have talked about them in a very detailed manner. So when you select the chart part, when you click on the chart table tools gets activated, and the same way this gets activated. If I select anywhere outside, you see that is not going to be available, right? So if you want to work on the pivot, first select any part of the pivot and then this is going to be activated, right? Generally in the previous versions you won't see this analyze. Instead of this analyze, I think there is another word called layout, but when you click on that you would see almost the same things, all the things, what you can see here right now. So you have the another option called the design option, right? So from here also you can do the things like, for example, if I click on the field list, the field list will be coming, right? But I would prefer just right click and say that show field list. Now what exactly we want to do? Now you see that I will be telling you all the pictures that how you're gonna make the pivot. Now if let's say you put the things in the rows. Now rows means that your data will flow in the downward direction, in the horizontal direction. So if you drag this, you can drag this, guys. What you need to do is just hover on this and just drag it like this, and the manager's name would come here. You can see the managers are coming here, right? And if you want to move it back, just move it like this, again drag it and release here, and that's it, it is gone. Or the another option, just check mark this. When you check mark this, this is going to fall here, right? And if it is going to fall anywhere else, then you can move it from there. That's very simple, right? So we got the manager name. Now let's say what we want is that under these managers, how many calls we have answered. Let's say this is what exactly we need. So now the call answered is a header which is actually a number, and you see that if you see this Ajay Pamar and Jay Parekh, Akshay Kaushal and Masood Ahmed, Donald, Alan Donald, these are all the team leaders which are repeating, which are repeating in this database, right? And the dates are changing basically. So every day they have a new performance, but we want to see the overall volume of the calls answered. So what you will do is you just drag this option here, because anything which you want to sum, average, max, man and minimum, you want to apply that kind of a mathematical operation, you put those things in the values. So the moment I do that, by default it is going to give me the sum of the calls answered. So you can see that I have got the very beautiful summary here. Now if you want the average, let's say you want the average performance, just click on this arrow and click on the value field setting, and you can change it from here. Just keep this average and click OK, and then your header would be average of call answered. So I'm just going to cancel it. Now you can see that this is exactly the pivot table looks like, right? So from here you can filter the things as well quickly. So if you send this file to summary to your manager, then what they can do, they can also select these names differently. For example, if I select this only 3 TLs and I press OK, the pivot will show the call answered for these 3 names only. So this is also going to be pretty awesome. And if you want to get back to the select all, just click on the select all and you will have your filter back. So this is how you can work on the pivot. Now what else we can do? Now there are a lot of things we can do. Now for example, if I just again hit on the field list, and let's say no, sorry, the field list, I think I selected something wrong. Show field list. Now once you selected the show field list, now what else you can do? By the way, you can also increase the length. If you have a more headers, guys, you can do that, right? You just need to put your this mouse on the corner, and that this as you can see, the picture of the mouse will change, and this means that you can drag it, right? So you can also increase the width of that. That's pretty fine, right? Now what we need, now let's say you also want the abandoned calls, so just no problem, just drag it here. Make sure it should be sum of abandoned. By default it is always abandoned. Now you can see that based on these manager names, we also have got the abandoned calls, right? Now what else you can do with this? Now there are a lot of things. For example, what if you need the date wise? So you can also click on the date, and you can put the date in the filter. The moment I put the date under this filter tab, see what happens, you get to see the filter. This is really amazing, guys, because you're from the filter, you can choose any date, right? So you can say that on the 9th of February I want to check the records. So on the 9th of the February only this actually manager has the record, right? So if you want to check for, let's say, 20th March, you can select the 20th of March. Not only this, if you want to select, let's say, a couple of the the dates, then you just click on the select multiple items. Once you check mark that, you will have the different dates. Now you can click quickly on all the dates which you actually looking forward to. So this is going to give you the results of all these selected dates. So now when you press OK, you see that it says multiple items. So multiple items means that it is going to give you the total number of calls answered and abandoned for these dates. So if somebody has to see this, you really can't identify from here, so you have to come back and see that what all dates we have selected. But you can do one thing, maybe you can put here insert and a shape, and you can write that the dates which we have selected, right? So you can enter mention the dates here: Feb 2, Feb 3, March 5th, and 6th July, 7th September, whatever. I mean, you want to do that, you can do that. That is not the problem, right? So this is the one of the way that the pivot can be prepared, right? Now what else we can do? Now let's prepare another pivot. So I go to the insert again, and I say insert pivot. Now this time, as you know, the data is selected, which is the same. I will create this in the new worksheet, not the existing worksheet. I click on the OK. Once you click on the OK, you will be on the new sheet, right? So now what we can do is I can again go back, and I can put the manager name here. Now in the manager name, I also need the associate name. So what you can do, you can go further and put the associate name under the manager name, right? You see that the associate names are coming. They are not really looking so cool, but we can change it, guys, right? But first, let's just prepare the pivot. So I need the call answered, right? I need the abandoned, right? So that's it for the time being. Now what else we can do? Now this is really not looking good, because it says I mean the data, the associates are coming below the TLs, below the managers, but they are not looking so cool. So what you can do is just go to the design tab, and in the report layout, click on the show in tabular form. Now when you click on the show in tabular form, guys, see what happens. The pivot actually shifts these associate names exactly after the manager names. Now you have here a pivot which is giving you the total as well. So how many totals, the total number of calls we have gotten for the manager names. Now this is a very useful option, but in this pivot we don't need that. We call this subtotal, right? If you need it, you keep it like this. If you don't need it, will not, we're going to remove that. So under the same design tab, you just got to click on the subtotal and do not show subtotal. Now remember, if your selection is outside, you won't be seeing that, right? So that can create a problem. As a beginner, you can forget this, right? So that's why I'm repeating. First, select the part of the pivot, any cell, the pivot table tool will be activated. Then go to the design, and then in the subtotal, say that do not show subtotal. The moment you do that, oh wow, now this is how the pivot actually is going to work. So now you can see that we have got in here the manager name, the associate name, and all the list basically we have gotten, right? Now we have got this kind of a detail. Now again, you can click on the show field list, if you want the dates, you can put the dates here. You can see that the date would come here, right? Not only this, guys, you can also do one thing. You can also put the date here. If you put the date here, this date header would start actually flowing in the column direction across the columns from the left to right. See this? So I'm going to put the date here, and the moment you put the date here, look at this. This is also a wonderful tool, right? I'm liking this option. So let me put everything in the center. Now you can see here you have got the date, and by the way, this is the header you don't need. So maybe we can do one thing. We can simply hide it, this row, and sum of call answered. If you want to keep it, fine. If you don't want to keep it, you can also, you know, hide it, if provided your team should know that this is, we are talking about, you know, the calls answered. So I can keep the alignment in the left. Now this is how it works, and now you have all the date here, right? The date formatting you can choose. You can simply select this entire row, and you can go to the format cells. Let me go to the format cells, and in the date you can, you know, select this date as well. So when you select that date, obviously you get to see the pivot like this. So we have all the dates here. So on January 30, 2016, this team leader has answered. Under this team leader, under this manager, associate Suman has answered 100 calls. And has she answered any other call? Yes, she answered the calls on 19th May as well. So how many calls in total she has answered? So you will get the answer for that as well. Now look at this. From here, your abandoned calls actually are starting, right? So you need to take care of this when you're actually going to start with the pivot, right? So here we have the calls answered, and once you have the calls answered, the next header which we will see from here, you have the, you know, abandoned call. So maybe you can change the color of it, right? So this is how, guys, you can, I mean, play around with the pivot. So I can change the color of it. Let's say I'm gonna make it just yellow, or not yellow, but maybe something else, maybe this color. All right, so in this way. And by the way, you can also do one thing. Let's do one thing. Why don't we go ahead and just, you know, freeze it, freeze page, use the freeze pane. I have selected C6 cell. Now what will happen, the headers will not change, and this is really going to look pretty cool. I can, you know, move left to right, and it is going to tell me that how many calls, and the calls are abandoned associate wise, under whose leadership, and at the same time, if you see, the total calls are also actually coming. So 120 calls are answered by the Suman here, 800 calls are answered by, you know, Cheki, and then Ajay has answered 870 calls. The performer of the, you know, this entire as on date is actually the associate called Kumar, who comes under Milind Suman, but at the same time he has also calls, you know, abandoned. There are a lot of calls abandoned, right? But if you see it as a process wise, then as a process wise, we have answered 606,843 calls, and 754 calls are abandoned, which were not answered, right? And you have a summary here for the date wise as well. On the January, we have answered overall the calls, you know, the 100, 200, and so on. So this is really pretty cool option, right? This is a good pivot. And not only this, guys, you can also filter it. If you're just looking for some specific associate, let's say this is the, you know, the person you want to have a look, you can filter it, and they're going to tell you all the things, right? And if you don't, let's say you don't want to work on some of the abandoned, you can also off it, right? So I guess for that, if I select all, then I think the row which we actually have hidden, that needs to be, you know, we get to see this. No, you can't put the filter here, because actually the reason is because in the show field list you have entered everything in the values, and here you can't put the filter, right? Now we can also change the direction of this, guys. Instead of putting the date here in the column, it would be very interesting if we put the date here. Let's see what will happen. Look at this, guys. Now you have the dates coming here, right? So why don't we go ahead and, you know, put the date after the associate name. So you can also do that. Just, you know, drag it and drop it after the associate name. Now you have here a wonderful pivot again. Now I don't want this kind of a color, right? So what we can do, we can also go to the design, and you can choose, you know, your own different kind of the pivots, right? So for that, first of all, you need to select the entire pivot. So what we can do, we can go to the analyze, and you can click on the select entire pivot table, or you can select manually as well. So let's give it some color. Maybe I would like to give this, you know, this kind of a pivot. Now this is the color actually which you have given yourself, right? So we need to actually change it. So what we can do is we can just go ahead and quickly, and we can say no fill. So let's say I don't want any fill, right? So in this way we can make this pivot beautiful. right? You can keep the headers. I mean, you can give it a maybe Arial black, and you can keep it 10, and just double click on that, and there we go, right? I can remove the grid lines, and now you can see that this is really pretty cool, right? This is again looking good. Further, if you want some another, these are all the different guys. You can see the pivots. If you scroll it down, you have these kind of a pivots as well. Well, this is really too much of the formatting, and I really don't like it, but it's all up to you, individual choice. I prefer keeping it like this. Maybe that's fine, right? So this is how you can create the pivot. Now you see that I have the dates, I have the call answered, I have the abandoned, I have the associate name, and this associate has answered the calls on these two dates. So this is really good. So the good thing is you can still use the filters, right? Because in the row columns you can always use the filter. If you want to use Ajay and let's say any other name, these are the names, and you click OK, and the data will change accordingly, right? Now, not only this, guys, there is a good thing about the pivot is that if your data changes, for example, if I go back to my original data, which was, I believe, in the sheet 5. Now let's say we are going to change these answered calls. Let me just keep it 1000, okay? And then again I'm going to change here 1000. Okay, let's say this is what I'm doing. Now when you come back to your pivot, now you know that how many calls we have answered for Ajay. It's actually 100 plus 20, which is 120. So I have changed the number. So if you want to see the new numbers, what you need to do, right click and refresh it. Okay, the moment you refresh it, you see that the calls are changed 1000 and 1000, right? Now here, guys, we can also do one very good thing. Now because I have made this pivot in this way, so we can also create the total. As I was telling you, the subtotal, if you remember, just go to the the design option, and here just click on the show all subtotals at the bottom of the group. Now the moment you do that, you see that you will have all the totals getting created, right? Now you have the totals for the Ajay Parmar, you have the totals for the Akshay, you have the total for the Donald. So every total is coming here. This is really cool option, and at the same time you also have the total for the associate name. So we are discussing about the individual level, we are discussing about the managers, we are discussing about the associate, the total, everything. That is really cool. And now I know this can be a little confusing because of the same color. So there is a good trick. What you can do is just put your cursor on the first header, and now you see that this arrow is coming, right? So you can basically go ahead on any of this cell, right? On any of the total, basically I'm trying to tell you. So the moment you get this, just click here. When you click it, every total is going to be highlighted. You can see that every total is highlighted. So now you can change the color of it. So I can make it of I can choose a different color. For example, this color, maybe this color, maybe this color. So it's all up to you. So let's say I'm gonna give this color, and I will give this maybe white font, and I can make it bold, and at the same time I can also make it little bigger because it's a total after all. So this is the way you can do that. And similarly, if you want to do for the associate names, put your cursor on this edge, and the arrow, you can see that this is the right arrow which is coming. Otherwise this is the plus sign. But the moment you keep your cursor on this, hover on this extreme side of this, on the border of this associate total, click here, and this is going to be highlighted. So further, you can also do one thing. You can also highlight these names. So in this way, basically you can do a lot of stuff, right? I don't think so I really have to explain you. You can be as creative as you want. So you can change the color as well. You can make this like this. So in this way, guys, you can change the things. And now this call answered, sum of call answered is really very big title, so no problem. What you can do is you can simply click on this and just remove it, right? But remember, if you just keep it like call answered, when you press enter, this will give you the error. Pivot table field name already exists. Now what does that mean? That means that your data already has this header, right? So it is not going to allow you, because if you look at the data, it has a call answered header, so pivot cannot use the same header, right? So we can do one thing. We can keep it like simply call answered, and then just insert some space here. Obviously inserting a space will make it different because now the number of the characters are not the same, That's what you can do. Or maybe you can change the direction, call answer, that's it, press enter, and there we go. So in the abandoned, what I will do, I will keep it abandoned only, but I will keep the space here, and the pivot will be, they are going to allow you, right? So double click and everything is going to reset. Auto fit, I'm talking about the auto fit option. So in this way, guys, you can create the pivot. So basically it depends that where do you want to move these things, the things like these rows, filters, and the columns, and your direction will change. If you want to put the manager name here, no problem. See, the good thing about the pivot is really your formulas, you're not using any formula, so it's a drag and drop show, so you can be very quick without even thinking. If you want to see that how the things are going to look at this. Now here you have the manager name coming, right? So these are the managers and these are the associate names. So this is also pretty fine. It all depends, how basically you want to do the things. And at the same time, if you right click and let's say you don't want the managers here, you want the associate name here, so that is also possible. You can put the manager name here and you can put the associate name here, and this way your associates would come here with the date. So it's all up to you. You can also put this in the filter list. If you put it in the filter list, the filter will be created, and from here you can be specific on the particular associate. If you select the Ajay, you will have the Ajay data for these dates, and the abandoned, everything is coming, guys, basically, right? You have the call answer, you have that abandoned, you have the total call answer. If you don't need that, you can hide it. That's perfectly fine, you can do that. And I guess we have an option also, if you want to remove these totals from here, I guess you go to the design and grand totals, off it. If you click off, yes, so it is going to be removed. You can see that now there is no total coming, right? So one is the grand total, one is the subtotal. So in this way you can make your pivot, guys, right? I will be discussing more about this in the coming series. Right now you can practice on this pivot, how to drag and drop. If you have any questions, let me know about it, right? So thank you so much, guys, for watching, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do that. We will be discussing about this pivot in the coming sessions more. And thank you for watching. Till then, have a good day, have a great learning. Thank you so much again for watching.